Okay, so you're here because you really want to understand something thoroughly, right? You want the important stuff, but without getting bogged down in every little detail.
It's like you want that expertly curated guided tour, you know?
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive, a real plunge into the shadowy world of Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
And we're going to equip you, the listener, with a clear understanding of just why this particular installment is so significant, why it really matters in the grand scheme of the FNAF universe.
It's more than just jump scares, right? There's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Oh yeah, way more. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is a surprisingly layered experience, and it's packed with lore, hidden stuff, and characters that have honestly become iconic in gaming.
We've got this amazing conversation to work with from NEXTGEN AI POD, where they really went in depth on the game.
And what we're doing here is taking their insights and focusing them, distilling them down for you.
So think of this as your shortcut, your express lane to understanding Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
We're talking about the basic setup, the key moments in the story, the animatronics that you really don't want to meet in a dark alley.
Or a brightly lit pizza place, for that matter.
Right, exactly. And then we'll even touch on some of the fan theories that have kept this game alive and well in online discussions for years and years.
Ready to shine a light on some of the darkness for you.
Let's do it. First things first, we've got to set the scene right. What world are we stepping into when we boot up Five Nights at Freddy's 2?
Okay, so the game drops you right into 1987.
Ah, yes, 1987.
Now, for those of you keeping track of the FNAF timeline, this is actually before the events of the first Five Nights at Freddy's game.
A prequel, if you will.
You got it! And you find yourself at a brand new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It's all shiny and new, advertised as new and improved.
New and improved, huh?
That's the tagline, but we'll see if it's truly an improvement as we go along.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Instead of maybe learning from the, shall we say, incidents of the past, they just double down.
Right. It's like, hey, more animatronics. That's the answer.
Classic business strategy, isn't it?
Exactly. But this new location does boast even more animatronics than before. And from what our source is telling us, they fall into a few different categories for you to keep in mind.
Okay, lay it on me. What kind of categories are we talking about here?
First up, you have the toy animatronics. These are like the sleek, new and improved versions of the classic characters. Think Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, but with a fresh coat of paint and a few extra bells and whistles.
The 2.0 versions.
Exactly. Then you've got the withered animatronics, which are, well, as the name suggests, the older, broken-down models. A little worse for wear, shall we say,
A little rough around the edges.
to put it mildly. And then, of course, we can't forget Balloon Boy, the bane of many a player's existence.
Ah, yes, Balloon Boy, the character everyone loves to hate. How could we leave him out?
It wouldn't be FN2 without him. And he's really interesting because he's not necessarily dangerous in the same way as the others. He's more disruptive.
Oh yeah, Balloon Boy. He's the master of annoyance. He might not kill you directly, but he'll sure make your life a living hell. And we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Absolutely. But let's talk about the actual gameplay for a minute, because it's quite different from the first game, right? Remember how you could just slam the doors shut when things got hairy?
Yeah, the good old days of having a little bit of security, a barrier between you and those creepy animatronics.
Well, forget about that in FM2. No doors for you in this one.
Oh, no doors. That's not good. That ups the stakes considerably, doesn't it? So if there are no doors, how do you survive? What are your options?
You're much more exposed, definitely more vulnerable, but you do have a few tools at your disposal. First, you have a Freddy mask that you can put on. The idea is that some of the animatronics will mistake you for one of their own and leave you alone.
Clever, using their own programming against them.
Right. Then you have a flashlight, which is obviously crucial for seeing in the dark, but it also has another use.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Well, there's this one particularly creepy animatronic called the Puppet. And to keep him at bay, you have to wind up a music box remotely. And you need the flashlight to see if he's coming.
Ah, so it's not just about illuminating the darkness. It's about keeping an eye on this puppet character. Sounds delightful.
Oh, he's a real charmer.
Yeah.
So imagine this. You're in this brightly lit, but still super creepy pizza place. You've got these new, more advanced animatronics roaming around, plus the old, broken down ones that are somehow even more unsettling. And you've got no doors to protect yourself. Your only defense is a mask, a flashlight, and a music box.
Stressful doesn't even begin to cover it.
Not even close. But That's just the setup, the basic premise of the game. And like a lot of fans know, it's really the deeper stuff, the lore, that makes Five Nights at Freddy's 2 so captivating.
And this is where the timeline gets really interesting. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is like a turning point in the overall story.
It's where things start to get a little complex, a little tangled.
Embraces complexity, as you so eloquently put it earlier. And that complexity is a big part of why fans love it, right? It gives you so much to think about and piece together. There's that element of mystery that really draws people in.
Exactly. And there are a couple of crucial lore points that are either introduced or heavily hinted at in this game. I think we have to start with the big one, the one that everyone always talks about.
You're talking about the bite of 87, right? Legendary stuff.
It's inescapable. And it's so fascinating because the game itself never actually shows you the bite.
So we never know for sure what went down or who was responsible. That's left up to our imaginations.
Right. And the game doesn't come right out and say who did it either. But it's clearly a pivotal event. We learn that it's the reason why animatronics aren't allowed to roam freely during the day anymore. So whatever happened, it was bad. Really bad.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What could possibly be so awful that it would lead to such a drastic decision?
And that's the beauty of it, right? It's that unanswered question that keeps people coming back to this game, keeps them theorizing and debating.
Absolutely. It's like a puzzle with a missing piece. And everyone's trying to figure out what that piece is and how it fits into the larger picture.
Exactly. But it's not just the bite of 87 that adds to the mystery. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 also dives deeper into the mystery of the missing children, which was already a really creepy element of the first game.
Yeah, that sense of something terrible having happened before the events of the game, it really adds to the atmosphere of dread, like you're walking into a place with a dark history.
Absolutely. And in this game, we're introduced to the puppet, who seems to be at the very heart of this whole missing children's storyline.
Okay, so tell me more about the puppet. What makes this character so central to the story?
Well, there are these mini-games scattered throughout Five Nights at Freddy's 2 that give you little pieces of the story. They're these retro, pixelated sequences, almost like flashbacks, and they suggest that five more children were lured and killed by someone wearing a golden Freddy suit.
Chillin' stuff.
Yeah. And all signs point to that someone being William Afton, who, as you know, becomes a major antagonist in the series.
Afton, right.
Yeah, that's him. And the really interesting thing about the puppet is that it's described as the entity that gives life to the animatronics.
Wait, gives them life? How so?
Well, the implication is that the puppet somehow places the souls of those dead children into the animatronics.
Whoa. So the puppet isn't just another scary animatronic. It's potentially the reason why they're all possessed in the first place. That adds a whole other layer of tragedy to this whole thing. It's not just a horror game. It's a story about loss and maybe revenge.
Right. It raises so many questions about the motivations of the animatronics. Are they trying to harm you? Or are they seeking something else entirely?
And then we have Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. These guys are just so enigmatic. They appear seemingly out of nowhere with no explanation. Our source from the NEXTGEN AI pod highlighted how much uncertainty surrounds these characters.
It's like, are they glitches in the game? Are they hallucinations that the night guard is having? Or is there something more going on, something supernatural?
It's that ambiguity that really gets under your skin, because your mind starts filling in the blanks, and what you come up with is often way scarier than anything the game could explicitly show you.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's Golden Freddy. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, when he shows up, it's game over. Instantaneously. No warnings, no chance to defend yourself.
Talk about a sudden jump scare. That's got to be terrifying.
What?
It just underscores that you're never truly safe in this game. Danger can literally appear out of thin air at any moment.
And speaking of unresolved mysteries, remember the bite of 87. Well, our source brings up some of the main contenders for who might be responsible. Mangle, Toy Chica, and even Freddy himself have all been suggested by fans.
It's a testament to the game's storytelling that we're still debating this years later.
Right. And I think it's because Five Nights at Freddy's 2 plants these seeds of mystery but never gives you definitive answers. It invites you to come up with your own theories and interpretations.
Okay, so we've talked about the setting, the gameplay, and all these intriguing lore elements. Now let's talk about the animatronics themselves, the stars of the show.
The ones you're trying so desperately to avoid. So we've got the toy animatronics, Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica. They've got this new, sleek, almost kid-friendly design, but our source makes it very clear that they are not to be trifled with.
It's that contrast that makes them so creepy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They look like they should be entertaining children, but there's something sinister lurking beneath the surface. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Did they mention any specific design elements that really stood out to them?
Oh, yeah. Toy Chica is particularly memorable because she can actually remove her beak and eyes, revealing these really disturbing inner workings.
Yikes. That's definitely nightmare fuel.
Definitely. And then there's Toy Bonnie, who has these completely empty black eyes. Like there's nothing there, no life, no emotion, just these voids staring back at you.
That's just unsettling. It reinforces that they're not human, that they're machines, cold, unfeeling machines.
Exactly. And then we've got the withered animatronics. These are the original crew, but well, they've seen better days.
Withered is a good word for it.
Yeah.
So what makes them stand out from the toy animatronics? What makes them particularly scary?
They're just so battered and broken. They look like they've been through a lot, like something has really damaged them.
So there's that element of past trauma or violence associated with them. Like they're carrying the scars of some unknown event.
Exactly. And the source specifically mentioned withered Foxy and withered Golden Freddy as being particularly terrifying in their dilapidation. Withered Foxy especially just looks so menacing, like he's always on the verge of attacking.
Right. There's a sense of aggression and unpredictability about them. It's like they're not just malfunctioning, they're angry.
And let's not forget about the puppet. In terms of gameplay, you have to keep a constant eye on him via the security cameras and make sure his music box is always wound up.
So it's a constant source of pressure for the player.
If you let that music start, he comes for you. And it's game over.
Talk about a ticking time bomb. You're constantly having to divide your attention, which makes you more vulnerable to the other threats lurking around. It's a really clever mechanic for building suspense and tension.
Definitely. And then there's Balloon Boy. He doesn't actually kill you, but he can make your life a misery. He's all about disrupting your defenses.
Okay, so how does he do that? How does he mess with you?
He drains your flashlight batteries, which is like the worst thing he could possibly do in a game where seeing is essential for survival.
Oh, wow, that's devious. So he's not a direct threat, but he weakens you, makes you more vulnerable to the other, more lethal animatronics. It's almost psychological warfare, isn't it?
Absolutely. So with all these unique characters and the deliberately vague lore, it's no surprise that Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has spawned a ton of fan theories.
The internet loves a good mystery, and this game provides plenty of fuel for speculation. So what were some of the theories they discussed in the Next Gen AI Pod episode?
Well, one theory is that Phone Guy, the guy who gives you instructions in the first game, might actually be the killer. There are definitely some things he says that are a little suspect.
Interesting. So the seemingly helpful guide might actually be the villain.
It's a possibility. And then there's Golden Freddy. His behavior is so strange, he just appears randomly with no obvious trigger. And when he does appear, it's instant game over. So fans have come up with all sorts of theories about his true nature and why he acts the way he does.
He's like the ultimate boogeyman lurking in the shadows, ready to strike at any moment.
Exactly. And our source also mentioned JJ. Have you heard of her?
JJ? No, I don't think so. Fill me in.
She's like a recolored version of Balloon Boy, and she sometimes appears under the desk, but nobody knows who she is or why she's there.
Another mystery for the pile. It's amazing how even the smallest details in this game can lead to huge debates and theories.
And a lot of those theories came from the hidden mini-games, like the Save Them minigame. Remember I mentioned those earlier? They're these pixelated sequences that expand on the lore. In Save Them, you actually play as Freddy, and your goal is to find these deceased children.
So it gives you a different perspective on the events, maybe even hints at what happened to them.
Right. And it raises so many questions about Freddy's role in all of this. Is he trying to help the children? Is he trying to stop William Afton? Or is he just another pawn in some larger game?
It really blurs the lines between good and evil, doesn't it? You're never quite sure who to trust.
And our source made a really important point about the legacy of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It essentially set the stage for many of the later games in the franchise. The Afton Saga, Sister Location, and even Security Breach all build upon the foundation that was laid in this game.
It's like the keystone that holds everything together.
Exactly. It might be a prequel chronologically, but it introduced so many key ideas and characters that became crucial to the overarching narrative.
It's a testament to the game's impact and influence on the horror genre as a whole.
And whether you loved it, hated it, or were just completely terrified by it, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is undeniably a landmark game in the world of horror and storytelling. Our source described it as a masterpiece, and honestly, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment.
It's a game that stays with you long after you finish playing it. It makes you think, makes you question, and it definitely makes you jump.
So let's do a quick recap for you. We've covered a lot of ground today. You've got the setting, 1987, a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You've got the gameplay changes, no doors this time, just a mask, a flashlight, and a music box to keep those animatronics at bay. We've talked about the toy animatronics, the withered animatronics, and the ever-annoying balloon boy.
And of course, we couldn't leave out those juicy lore tidbits like the bite of 87, the mystery of the missing children, and the puppet's role in all of this.
Plus all those fan theories that have been swirling around for years.
And remember, all of this insight comes from the great folks over at NEXTGEN AI POD. We've taken their in-depth conversation and boiled it down to the essentials for you.
So now that you've got all this knowledge, we want to leave you with a couple of questions to ponder. Based on everything we've discussed, who do you think was responsible for the bite of 87? And which animatronic, based on our descriptions, do you find the most terrifying?
These are the kinds of questions that have kept the FNAF community buzzing for years. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about interpretation and piecing together the clues.
And if you're looking to go even deeper down this rabbit hole, we highly recommend checking out some of the online discussions and fan theories. You'll be amazed by the level of detail and the creativity that fans have put into unraveling the mysteries of Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Think about it this way. We've just scratched the surface of this game's secrets. Imagine what other hidden depths and untold stories might be lurking out there, just waiting to be discovered.
In the games we play, the books we read, maybe even in our own lives.
Exactly. The world is full of mysteries. You just have to know where to look.